All right, this is the final lecture for speech on persuasive speaking. We've kind of gone through the different processes for um, informal or informal speech over the course of this semester. So this is the very last one that we're going to be looking at, and that's persuasion. What persuasion is, and how you can use persuasion to your advantage, knowing the ins and outs of that. So, persuasive speaking is the process of attempting to influence others. And that can be in their attitudes, influencing their attitudes, their values, their beliefs, or their behavior. And so, persuasion, the art of persuasive speaking, can be traced back to ancient Greece. They would hold these public forums and they would debate public issues and make public decisions, important decisions amongst the public. And you had your guys like Aristotle and Plato, who were coining these terms that we still use today. When in regards to persuasion, so the word rhetoric means using any and all available means of persuasion. And a good persuasive speaker uses any and all available means of persuasion to develop solid arguments and to attempt to influence those attitudes, values, beliefs, and behaviors of others. So, we are gonna not think about argument in terms of what you probably have done with your siblings or a friend or an enemy, I guess, a frenemy at school. It's not a quarrel. An argument is when you articulate a position in a solid, logical, well written argument, and you use your any and all available means of persuasion. And we call those logos, ethos, and pathos. We're going to take a closer look at what those look like. So logos, ethos, and pathos. Logos is persuasive strategy of constructing logical arguments to use evidence and reasoning. That's appealing to your logic. You're going to use research, evidence, data, facts and figures. All those things kind of fall in underneath that umbrella of logos. Ethos is when you highlight, as a speaker, your own abilities, your own competence, your own credibility, your own character, to try to convince others that you know what you're talking about. They should support your position or adopt your belief or your whatever it is that you are attempting to persuade them that you are the best person for that job. So appealing to your own competence and your own character to convince others that to support your position, whatever it is that you're up for persuasion. And then pathos is when you appeal to emotions, appealing to all different range of emotions to help support your position. And so used, strategically, and sometimes in combination. You can use them in combination with one another to develop solid arguments to help convince others to support your position. So a persuasive speech goal is a proposition or a declarative sentence that clearly indicates the position that you advocate. Look at these two statements. I want to inform my audience about the practice of pirating copyrighted media. And I want to convince my audience that pirating copyrighted media without paying for it is wrong. So when you say you want to inform your audience, that is an informative speech goal. We talked about that in the last unit. And it's different. It's different than a persuasion. If I want to inform my audience about the practice of pirating copyrighted media, all I have to do is make sure that the audience understands and remembers what I'm talking about in regards to copyrighted media and piracy. But persuasion is different. It's persuasive. That second statement is a persuasive speech proposition. It's not only for them to remember and understand, but also agree and possibly take action. I want to convince my audience that pirating copyrighted media without paying for it is wrong. Okay, so there's three types of propositions. You have a proposition of fact. That's a statement designed to convince the audience that something did or did not occur, is or is not true, or will not occur. That's a proposition of fact. A proposition of value is a statement designed to convince the audience that something is good, bad, desirable, undesirable, fair, unfair, moral, immoral, sound, unsound, beneficial, harmful, important, or unimportant. Okay, so we have fact, we have value, and then we have a proposition of policy. And that's a statement designed to convince your audience that a particular rule, plan, or course of action should be taken. And so when you think about writing your propositions, you got to think about your target audience. We've talked about this multiple times by this point. Target audience is the group of people that you most want to persuade. It's also our audience changes with every speech that we've given. We have to think about those things. We have to think about our audience and their beliefs and their values when we are creating successful speeches. And this is no different with persuasion. If you can think about your target audience and you can figure out their starting attitude towards what your topic is. Are they in favor? Are they supportive? If that's the case, then your only task is to reinforce and strengthen their beliefs. Are they neutral? Are they like Switzerland? Are they have no opinion whatsoever? They can be uninformed. They can be neutral. They can be apathetic. Uninformed means they don't know enough about the topic to have formed an opinion. So your job then is to provide the basic argument and information for them to become informed so that they can form their own opinions. If they're neutral, they know the topic, they know the basics, but it's just not enough to form an opinion. So you want to provide evidence and reasoning to help build up their knowledge and show why your position is superior to others. Then they can be apathetic. That means they have no opinion because they're not interested. They're not unconcerned. They're unconcerned. They're indifferent. It doesn't relate to them on a personal level. So your job then is to find ways to show how it relates to them or to their needs. And then you have people that are just flat out opposed. And it's really with those other levels, like you can bump them up by degrees. You can move them towards your goal. And be opposed is very much, one that you have to really think about, that because it's unrealistic to think that you're going to, just by giving your speech, you're going to change your audience's mind from completely against to all the way for. Okay. Instead, you want to seek incremental change. You want to move them small degrees in your direction. How do you do that? Where does that come in? And what tactics do you need to do that? Okay, so rhetorical appeals to logos. Logo strategies are built on logic. They're built on reasoning. Sound arguments that appeal to logos, it's gonna have a claim, which is the conclusion that you want your audience to agree with. You're gonna have support, generous support, that is strategically chosen, facts, opinions, experiences, observations. Those are the grounds for accepting or agreeing with your claim that you're presenting to your audience. And then you have a warrant. That's the reasoning process that connects the support to the claim. So you can connect that with either inductive reasoning, or you want to push them in a general direction based on several pieces of specific evidence, or do you want to use deductive reasoning, which is arguing that something is true for everything in a certain class and it's true for a given item in that class. It kind of goes from large to small and small to large. So the thing, though, you have to be careful with logic is you can have fallacies in reasoning, and you want to be careful to avoid those. And we're just going to look at 5 common ones just really briefly. You have hasty generalizations. That occurs when your claim is not, it either doesn't have enough evidence to, fully support it, or it's only supported with one weak, or it's not supported with evidence at all, or it's only supported with weak evidence, one weak evidence. So you have to provide enough supporting material to satisfy the audience that these instances are not isolated or handpicked. An example of that is all pit bulls are dangerous. Well, we know that that's not necessarily the case, and there's a lot of evidence to support that, yes, but all pit bulls are not dangerous. And so that's a hasty generalization. You have to be careful that you provide enough evidence and that you use strong examples if you're going to make claims like that. False cause, it's post hoc ergo propter hoc, which means after this, therefore because of this. That happens when you have a cause that fails to be related to or to produce the effect. To explain that a little bit better, school violence is caused only by television violence or a lack of parental involvement. Sometimes that's true, yes. School violence can be caused by the violence that kids are exposed to on television. It can be caused by, they didn't get enough parental involvement at home. There's a lack of parental involvement. But that's not always the case. So just because those things happen in relation doesn't necessarily mean that that's what caused the second one, if that makes sense. You have either or, which is when you have a speaker that suggests something and that there are only two alternatives. So because of the possibility of kids receiving poison or drug-laced candy, trick-or-treating should be banned. Here's your two alternatives. Really just one there, but we should ban trick-or-treating because kids might get drug-laced candy. There are more alternatives than that. It's not an either-or kind of situation. Straw man is when someone takes another person's argument or point and distorts it or torques it in some kind of way. And usually, to do that is to, let me give the example because that's probably easy. So person number one gives a speech about a 7-day waiting period to purchase handguns. Okay. 7 days. I'm not trying to take away your right to purchase handguns. I'm just saying there should be a 7-day waiting period to purchase a handgun. Person number two is going to come back and say that it's our constitutional right to bear arms. You can't tell me I have to wait 7 days to purchase a handgun. Person number one is not trying to take it away. It's just trying to strengthen the regulations that make it more difficult for people that have issues or whatever to purchase a handgun. And person number two is distorting that. It's called straw man. He's taking that argument and exaggerating and then using it to attack the claim that the person initially made. Okay? And then the last one is ad hominem. We see this one all the time. A lot of these fallacies we see, especially during presidential elections, you see this a lot of times. Ad hominem literally means against the man. So that was when one person is attacks or praises a person making the argument rather than addressing the argument itself. We see this a lot of times in politics. So you didn't even go to church. How can you claim to be a Christian? Well, do you have to go to church necessarily to be a Christian? Not really. So you can't use the claim, the argument to attack or praise the person. One of these things is not like the other. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean that, the person that's making the argument don't attack the person that's making the argument, attack the claim itself, address the argument itself. I'm going to stop right here, and I'm going to start a second video very shortly because I've got a little bit left to do. And so we'll come back with part 2 of persuasive speaking.